I'm going to try not to bore you all too long with a slideshow. It's just a little history of Rotax and product range engines. My current position is Managing Director of Common Aviation Suppliers. I try and do as little as possible. So I'm trying to get a picture of the Rotax factory. It's based in Austria. It's in Upper Austria. It's quite a huge factory. And of course, they produce a wide range of engines for various products. The aircraft engines, of course, are produced in their own facility. They do not share assembly or production with the other product ranges. The following video is not an official publication from Rotax. I'm going to point that out. It's just for information purposes. Rotax has covered a range of aircraft engines. Covers the 912 series, which you're all quite familiar with. That includes the 80 horsepower and 100 horsepower carbureted engines. We then have the 912 IS engine, that's the 100 horsepower fuel injected engine. The 914, which is our carbureted turbocharged engine, that's 114 horsepower. And in the recent years, we've had the 915 and 916. Those produced 140 and 160 horsepower, respectively. So then, before anyone asks about the 582, that's been discontinued about 2 or 3 years ago, but parts are still available for a while. The other products that engine Rotax make engines for are the Ski-Doos, Sea-Doos, Can-Am Spider, and Can-Am off-road vehicles. They also make engines specifically for Aprilia, BMW, and Buell motorcycles. And the car is still a very big part of their business. They make a car channel. Rotating axle. So back in 1920, there was a company that produced farming implements. And they invented the rotating axle that you commonly get on the back of a bicycle. And we actually have a picture of the one that was manufactured, and they invented that back in 1920. Thereafter, Europe economy was still very agricultural. They continued to start to build engines for agricultural purposes. And while all this was happening, on the other end of the Atlantic in Canada, there was a young engineer called Armand Bombardier. And Armand got inspiration from the big snowcats to build a compact personal transport vehicle on snow. And he invented the first Ski-Doo. He has a picture of it there, with made entirely of wood. But he had to find an engine for this. And he started getting engines from Rotax in Austria. But by 1970, he found so many engines, Bombardier had only such a big company, that he bought the factory off. Then became known as Bombardier Rotax. A very quick history, in the 1970s, they had a lot of square engines from the snowmobiles. At the same time, there was a demand for engines for motorized gliders in Europe. But the regulations there required that the engines be certified. So Rotax actually certified the first two-stroke engine back in 1973. It was called 642. But at the same time, there was grassroots aviation, microlight and ultralight, and it started developing worldwide. And they took the opportunity and created more engines of theirs and adapted them for use. Engines most of you are familiar with was 503, 532, and of course leading up to the 582. They started the development of the Rotax 9 series back in 1984. They identified the need for a more modern four-stroke aircraft engines that had to be light and compact and easy to install into various types of aircraft. Of course, they got the first certification in 1989 for 80 horsepower. 1990, they got national approval as a production and maintenance organization. And then through the years, they received the various type certificates. So just on the note of type certificates, I often get this question about what is the difference between a certified and non-certified Rotax. Rotax produce and certify all of their engines. They then offer it as a non-certified version. So the engine you buy, though it's non-certified, what we now refer to as ASTM, is manufactured to exactly the same technical standards as a certified engine. During 2003, they had the time for overhauls increased. 2004, they got design and organization approval. By 2005, they got ASTM approval from the United States. And the ASTM standard was used widely for light support aircraft worldwide. 2009, they saw the increase to 2,000 hours for both 912 and 914 engines. 2012 was the release of the IS fuel-injected engines. So some important websites for you to make note of. First one, of course, is our website, that's Common Aviation Supplies. The website features live stock and pricing. It's linked to our system, and orders are updated directly into our system. But more importantly, for ordering of spare parts, we've now put the parts catalogs in there with all the exploded views, also showing what is available. And the other website is, of course, Rotax's official website, flyrotax.com. This website features engine registration for end users. You can also download all of the manuals and service documents, absolutely free of charge, with no registration whatsoever. And that's on flyrotax.com. So all of the manuals right up to heavy maintenance are available there. So, a couple of unique features of Rotax that makes it very different to other engines. The first thing is that they have what we call a bolt crankshaft or a press-fit crankshaft. And they did this, it's something that they've been experts in, they've been doing it for a long time, and it also allowed them to keep the engine compact and light. The other thing is that the Rotax engine uses a dry oil sump system or an external oil tank. So once again, this allows for a compact engine design. It allows for high engine tilt angles. There's no scavenge pump. Oil is returned from the engine to the tank from crankcase pressure. And of course, with the external oil tank, it allows the installation to various types of aircraft. We want lots of flexibility. Rotax also chose to go with water-cooled heads for a number of reasons. Firstly, they chose to go with high-revving engines. They applied their motorcycle technology. And being a high-revving engine, they have to have efficient cooling of the heads. But the other one was also it allowed them to keep the engine really compact. Because if they had to have air-cooled heads, they would have to have cooling, it would make the overall engine really big. And also, the engines also don't need chopping overhauls. Most engines reach 2,000 hours without ever having the heads taken off. They never need that. And there's also no torquing of the heads, locally. Because the engine is very so high, they can slow the propeller down, so they developed a reduction gearbox. And by slowing the propeller down, it allows one to have more efficiency from the propeller, but they also integrated a torsional vibration system to deal with propeller pulsing. That's integrated into the gearbox. The ignition system, it's all solid-state technology. There are no moving parts except for the magneto that generates the current. It's completely redundant, two completely independent ignition systems. And then, of course, the fuel-injected engine. So, what makes it okay? I'm not going to go into too much technicalities. If you have a question, you can bring it up later. It's a fully redundant ignition system. So, the ECU is actually consists of two lanes. You have a lane A and a lane B. And each lane is allocated their various spark plugs and injectors. So with dual injectors, dual ignition, all of the essential sensors are also redundant on the engine. The power for the engine to run is provided by the engine itself. So running the engine is not dependent on battery power. It's got dual generators, and generator A purpose is solely to provide power to the ECU, the fuel pumps, and the other ancillary bits. And then, of course, they have the generator B, and they charge the battery on the airplane. The different types of documentation that's available, these are all available on flyrotax.com. You have the installation manual, the operator manual, all of the operating parameters and power curves, etc. You have both line and heavy maintenance manuals, and you have illustrated parts catalogs. Other documents available from Rotax are service letters. Service letters includes miscellaneous information, for example, about warranty or a change about documentation. They would release that in a service letter. We then have a service instruction. Service instructions are quite important because if they want to get information out there about various maintenance functions, it's much quicker for them to release it in a service instruction than to revise the manuals. So service instruction provides very important information for maintenance and operation. They then have a service instruction for parts and accessories. We call it an SI pack. This covers all of the accessories, radiators, oil coolers, exhausts, etc. We have service bulletins. Service bulletins are always mandatory. They have an expiry date, and they will provide details as to what parts and how much labor Rotax will cover for any inspections or repairs that are required under that service bulletin. We also have alert service bulletins. These are of very important nature. They almost always require immediate compliance before flying, and it would often result in the aircraft being grounded until an AHP is complied with. I've had this as well. Direct rotation of the propeller is counterclockwise facing the propeller. It's quite important to note this from operation related, because if you have to turn the prop in the opposite direction of rotation, and equal one rotation of the propeller equals 2.5 rotations on the engine. And turning it in the opposite direction of rotation does two things. One, it engages the starter motor, which could cause damage to the back clutch. It drives it and the starter motor. And two, there's a chance that sometimes an oil pump could suck air into it and give an airlock. So from an operational perspective, avoid turning the propeller in the opposite direction of rotation. They have a service instruction relating to your, what they call operating fluids, and that's simply your fuel, oil, and coolant. You can take a picture of that. That document is available to download on Rotax. So when it comes to fuel, the specified fuels are MOGAS 95. It's important to pay attention to the storage and quality. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions about fuel, which we'll discuss later. I just want to point this out to you. So we're having a lot of trouble with bad quality MOGAS in the country due to fuel being imported. Of course, avgas is allowed and also preferred if you're in an area where you have doubtful MOGAS quality. So please rather use avgas. What you have to pay attention to is if you are running avgas, you need to change oil every 50 hours. I've heard people say 25 hours. I don't know where it comes from, but it's really not necessary with these engines. Spark plugs need to be inspected and cleaned at every 100 hours. And of course, cleaning of the oil tank is essential because the lead deposits accumulates in the base of the tank. When it comes to alcohol-based fuels, Rotax they've tested EN10, that is fuel blended with 10% ethanol. The oil, previously Rotax listed a bunch of different automotive oils which they've tested. Now they've taken all of that away because it became too difficult for them to continue testing all these formulation changes. They then partnered up with Shell to make an oil specifically for the engine that was suitable for different operating conditions and also suitable with both MOGAS and avgas, called Shell 4+4. This is the only specified oil for the engines. In addition to that, with the release of the 916, because you've got an engine with much higher pressures and temperature, they had to have another oil developed, and they introduced the XPS. Now, the XPS oil is mandatory for the new 916. When it comes to coolant, the most important thing with coolant is we're looking for a silicate-free formula. Silicate is that white powder you normally find on your radiator caps, and it's very important to use a silicate-free formula. silicate builds up between the water pump seal and leading to premature wear of the water pump seal. It's quite expensive to repair. The Castrol reticle is an example. It's quite easily available all over in South Africa. And it's available in a pre-mixed formula. It's mixed for 250 liters of water. Checking of oil level. I want to spend quite a bit of time. I was talking to Danny earlier about checking oil level. A very common problem with our engines is overfilling of the oil. So they're putting the oil all the way up to the maximum amount of zero stick, and in every flight they find they're talking about. These engines do not use oil. What's actually happening is the excess oil is being thrown out of the breather. And I think it's just a historical thing that aircraft engines use oil, so it becomes a habit to top up in every flight. And then, of course, daily checks is to check the coolant. Try and avoid opening the pressure tap. You should always put the coolant in the overflow bottle. When the engine's cold, it should be at the minimum level, and of course, should not exceed the maximum when the engine is warm. If you've got water in the overflow bottle, it's really not necessary to open the pressure cap every day. The standard checks in the morning is, this is also something, I know we're going to get a lot of questions about the burp or not to burp. And we're not talking about after dinner. The manual calls for turning the propeller, and it's got nothing to do with building up oil pressure or anything. You turn the propeller simply to feel if there are any seizures or any failures inside the gearbox, any unusual mechanical noises. That's part of the daily check. Then, of course, a description of the system. So the fuel-injected engines are features an ECU, that's your dual computer, and it features a fuse box that handles the distribution of power to all of the components. Okay, so done with the boring part. We can start with questions.
I've come across recently asking how come the oil canister is filling up and they're not adding oil. And we discovered there must be a fuel issue. But how do you bypassing the pistons to get there?
Okay, so thank you. A very good question and a very important one. We're finding cases where the fuel has been contaminated with diesel or paraffin. Most recent one was in Cape Town in Morningstar, and they actually had the fuel tested, and they found between 20 and 30%. The lab couldn't identify exactly what it was. They said it looks like paraffin or diesel contamination. And this happens, we've got a lot of fuel that's imported now, so it can happen along that supply chain in the handling of it. In outlying areas, fuel is delivered in shared tankers and they have a membrane in between, and the diesel seeps into the petrol in those things. So the membranes don't seal perfectly, so you get a bit of seepage into it. To answer your question, what happens is the fuel mixture gets into the combustion engine. The diesel requires much higher temperatures and pressures to combust. So the residue of unburned diesel remains behind on the sleeves, goes past the rings into the oil. So to answer your question, that's exactly what's happening there.
Thank you. So we chatted briefly about the fuel, but a question I would like to ask, and I think is interesting, is what is the micron requirements on the inline fuel filter? Because obviously that's an airframe specific equipment. What is the engine spec for the filtration?
I remember correctly, I think it's 50 micron. I'll have to refer to the installation manual to double check that. So Rotax does make a recommendation in terms of filtration, but Rotax don't supply the filters. They make recommendations for the aircraft manufacturer to comply with. In most cases it is. It's advisable to put a bypass in case the filter blocks up to ensure continuous fuel flow. What else? Can we move on to the subject of to burp or not to burp? So, it's a common practice for everyone in the morning with the Rotax engine are turning the propeller and listening for a burp in the tank. And I just want to explain exactly what that burping process is doing. So when you're turning the propeller, you're generating crankcase pressure. The crankcase pressure then forces any residual oil in the crankcase back into the tank. And that burp that you hear means that it's now forced all of the oil from the tank, this is now returning air. This is more of a maintenance function than an operational function. It's not necessary for you to do that every day, unless you're into the morning exercise. It's up to you. On your dipstick, if you do not burp it, that is, you finish flying today, you park the airplane, you come in the next morning to check your oil level. I'll give you a simple guide. It should not be below the minimum mark. And will vary from one aircraft to the next because of different positions of oil tank and lubricant lines. So without burping, your oil should never be below the minimum. If you are unsure of the oil level, then you take the cap off, turn the prop until you hear the burp, and check your oil level again. Do not top your oil up to the maximum mark on the dipstick. I guarantee you, if you do that, it's going to be throwing oil up, either making the mess in the air. The ideal oil level after burping, so now you've removed all of the residual oil from the engine into the tank, is halfway to 3/4 between the minimum and maximum. That is the sweet spot.
Question on one of our groups that burping the engine will cause wear on the cylinders.
No, I wouldn't agree with that, because there's always residues of oil on the cylinders. And also note that these engines have little silicon-lined cylinders. They are not cast iron. So you should not get any wear on them. Unless, of course, the engine's been standing for a long time and the residual oil on the cylinders has now dried up or run off. So it's incorrect.
Can you explain the difference from the old generation 912 and the newer one on the ignition? And is it possible to retrofit the newer style with the advanced auto balance to the old generation engine?
No, it's not possible. They've changed the timing, they've changed the allocation of the pickups. So, I mean, it's not completely impossible, but it will require updating of the magneto flywheel. They've changed the triggers, a complete new trigger coil as well as the new. It's going to be a very expensive exercise. Okay, all right, so with the 100, the 912 100 horsepower, it's going to be high compression, and it had a very ugly starting gear, really rough. And what Rotax did was they did two things. They changed the starting timing by altering the trigger on the flywheel, which then excites the trigger coil and sends a message to discharge the spark. But what they did in addition to that, they call it the soft start option or advanced start option. What happens is in the electronic module, it's always receiving two signals from trigger coils. The one signal is a retarded timing setting, and the second one is an advanced timing setting. Now, the module will detect also the cranking speed of the engine. And when it detects low cranking speeds, like 100, 150 RPM, it will then apply the retarded timing setting. The moment it detects that the cranking speed is now transitioning to over 600, it understands that the engine is starting and it will switch over to the advanced starting. Now, because of that, on 100 horsepower, we have very, very violent start. The advanced start option requires a connection to the starter relay. So it gets a 12-volt input. So it gets a third input. Remember, it's got two inputs. One is the retarded timing advanced. It's now getting a third input from the 12-volt that it gets from the starter relay. And this 12-volt tells the module that it must hold the retarded timing for a period of 3 to 8 seconds before changing it to advanced. And it provides a much smoother starting behavior. With all the new engines, the soft start option is why you'll notice when you start the engine, runs a little bit rough for a few seconds and then smoothens out. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Niren, I just want to know the different offer and 912 URS. And when I put those new spark plugs to the 3, that runs horribly when I do the lecture. So I went back to the old MTK spark plug and see what is there reason for it.
I've heard a few people complain about that, and I don't know what is possible. So just a little bit of background on this change from technically there's nothing wrong with the NGK spark plug. It was NGK that stopped the supply of the plug to Rotax. It was not Rotax. Educate for a long time did not want the products used in aviation. Okay, one of the big problems we find with new spark plugs. So Rotax made to go out to the market and get a spark plug made for them. The torque specification on the new Rotax plug is 16 Newton meter. One of the problems we found that people were still using 20 Newton meters with the inch case spark plug, and that caused some damage inside it. That could be a possible cause.